This podcast is sponsored by Affinity Recruiting and Consulting. 94% of small businesses and nonprofits disappear before their 10th birthday. The top 6% survive and thrive for two reasons: talent and strategy. Affinity's team of experts provides talent acquisition, outsourced HR, strategic planning, and fundraising support. Long story short, they fix the problems that cause small businesses and nonprofits to fail. If you could use help with recruiting, consulting, or HR, email their founder, Rob Murphy, to start a conversation today. You can also visit them online at affinitytoday.com, and both of those links are in the episode notes. Welcome back to another episode of Beyond Rockets. In this episode, I sit down and talk with the owner and operator of Regale Cupcakes, a local cupcake shop located here in Huntsville, Alabama on University Drive. Thank you so much for sitting down and talking with me today. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what it looks like owning and operating a cupcake shop?
So my name is Travonee. I am the owner, baker, kind of almost everything at Regale Cupcakery. Our cupcake shop is unlike any other cupcake shop that's really in this area, where everything we do in our shop is done to order.
Okay.
So like we'll frost every cupcake to order, decorate it. People can come in and they can even create their own if they would like, where they can pick their base, their frosting, up to 3 different toppings. And then with that, we also have a full espresso bar. So like we're trying to bring the coffee shop vibe to a cupcake shop as well.
Interesting. Okay. So I know that you're originally, so you're not necessarily originally from Huntsville. You actually moved here from Wisconsin because of family and stuff. Can you tell me a little bit about that and kind of what you were doing in Wisconsin at the time?
So I have a full culinary degree. I went to culinary school. I'm born and raised in Milwaukee. Went to culinary school in Appleton, about 15 minutes from Green Bay, and kind of fell in love with baking while I was there. And when I was in school, my family moved down here.
Okay.
So when I graduated and I was trying to figure out my next move, I'm thinking, I'm going to come to Huntsville and stay for 6 months and save up money and then move out east somewhere.
6 months turns into almost 10 years.
Almost 10 years. Yeah, it's one of those things. I moved here. I'm like, oh, it's the South. There's nothing going on here. And all of a sudden,
Huntsville 10 years ago is very different than it is today.
It was like right on the edge when like the farmers markets were just starting and like some of the OG food trucks were just getting started out. And I started realizing more and more about trying to run the business. They're like, wow, there's a lot that actually does go on here in Huntsville.
Yeah.
And like watching it grow now, I'm like, I don't know if I want to leave.
So you were working on the cupcakes though in Wisconsin somewhat, kind of tinkering with the idea, correct?
Yeah, a friend of mine and I actually started it like in Wisconsin, but it was a very like, let's just do it on the side, kind of have fun. Yeah. Then it was like every flavor was alcohol infused. They're like trying to figure out, like I think like the tomato soup cupcake, which is one of my favorite ones on the menu, was one of the first cupcakes that we did. It was like, this is something, because we want something that's not the traditional, like just cupcake.
Yeah.
Like something that like, and then like I get to use a little bit of my like pastry background to actually turn it in, like take different dessert ideas and turn them into cupcakes, which is, that's the fun part about my job. So
10 years ago, you move here, you're tinkering around with this idea. What did you have a typical kind of 9 to 5 at that time, or like what were you doing for work as the cupcake was just kind of on the side?
So I started working in a local bakery when I first moved here, and I was there for about a year.
Okay.
I'm not going to name that bakery. It was definitely an experience. And like I got to it was one day when I was like, I'm just going to just go for it and like take a whole entire summer and just, try to do as many farmers markets as possible. Because that's where we started was farmers markets and like some specialty events. And then I think in like 2016, 17, we started moving into doing things with food trucks, which is so much fun.
So 2012 or so is when you moved here. When did you, so I guess was it 2013 or so when you started kind of going that summer of like, I'm going to give it all I can?
I moved here in 2013.
Okay.
So the summer of 2014 is when I actually I'm like, I'm going to just start trying to do a little bit more and more. And it just kind of each year just kind of started growing more and more and more, which has been a lot of fun.
Yeah. So you were just going, I guess at the time, how many different farmers markets or different events like that were there in 2014, 2015?
So it wasn't as many as we did, like as there are right now in Huntsville. Like I remember doing some farmers markets where it was literally, you would get 5 people that come to the market in a 3-hour span. And it's like, okay, cool. Because when you're just starting out, you don't really know anybody, and you're trying to get your business out there. Some of the markets were already full because you didn't know, you have to sign up for this in February. And so, like, I remember constantly emailing Green Street every single week, like, hey, do you have any cancellations?
Yeah.
And think we finally got to do one that year, and just kind of kept going from there.
Yeah.
And started doing like the Bailey Cove Farmers Market and the Latham Farmers Market. And then I think we did some stuff in Providence, and there was a Terry Heights Farmers Market that we would do.
Okay.
Which that was a fun market.
So was from 2014 in that summer when you started doing it and you kind of quit your job and you were doing that, since from 2014 to now, has it just been the cupcakes as kind of your job, or have you gone and done other things too at the same time?
It has just been, my life has revolved around cupcakes, which is very weird to say or tell people who I'm just meeting, like, yeah, I make cupcakes for a living. And they're like, how? Like, I've had family members that are like, you can't make money doing that. It's like, no, it's possible if you do it the right way.
So you're growing this cupcake, and was the name that you have right now always a name you had in mind? And was that something that you kind of, like, what was the initial response you were seeing from not only the name, but the branding and the cupcakes themselves when you were going to these markets?
So the name actually comes, it's in Italian. It
okay.
means kingly in Italian. So kind of like saying, yeah, the king of cupcakes, and, kind of going with the very royal theme of everything, which has been kind of fun to do. And we get to kind of a little bit more fun with it in the shop. There's a lot of purple in the shop, but people's response to it has always been nice. It's just the whole, it's Regal or Regale or things like that. So we're like, I like to keep saying, like, at this point, as long as people know who we are, it doesn't matter how you pronounce it.
So was those markets, those Green Street markets, and as the markets and like these events in Huntsville continue to grow over the last couple of years, I mean, you've been able to go more and more things. Was this success and kind of just that initial response from the consumer a great response off the bat, or did it take a little bit to kind of get people used to it?
It took a little bit, because we were not typically, like when we were first starting, we didn't have a set schedule of what markets you could do. Yeah. Because some of them we were filling in for other people who couldn't be there. And like, I think there was the summer of, 2015 is when we actually got like a set market schedule where it's like, okay, we're going to we'll be here this day. And we started doing the social media posts and trying to realize that social media is one of our best friends sometimes.
Yeah, best and worst friends sometimes. Because you're always fighting with everyone else trying to push on social media. And so you grow the business, you're growing it through these markets, you're growing it through those means. Was that kind of the bulk of what orders would come through, or people would reach out to you for special orders as well?
So it would be majority markets and it's like the special events we would do, and then we would do some birthday parties or wedding cupcakes on the side, which would be fun. But yeah, at one point it was just like, we can't really take on much else with all the markets we were doing.
Yeah, because I mean, it is just you. So you were the one traveling to all these different markets. And so you said you started originally with a friend of yours, kind of tinkering with it in Wisconsin. Did he ended up kind of help with you, or is it really just been you since you've fully jumped into it in 2014?
So when I moved here, he and I had a conversation about like, hey, I think I want to start the business up here, and he's like, oh yeah, have fun with it.
Like, good luck.
Because he was more like the marketing side of things, and I was more like the culinary mind behind it, and it's one of those things. I'm like, cool, this business was built for two people, and
it's quickly became one.
Yeah.
So you continue to grow the business. You continue to go to these markets, more events like this are growing in Huntsville. As Huntsville's growing. I mean, we see the food truck rallies, the farmers markets are continuing to grow all around Huntsville, South Huntsville. Madison's doing markets now. And in 2020, you actually kind of, the business is booming, I'm assuming, and you're able to kind of have the conversation of, hey, brick and mortar might be something possible. What was going on from that 2015 to 2020 and kind of within the business?
So I would say we did farmers markets from 2015 to like 2018. Okay. And by 2018, I started to want to do a lot more things with the food trucks.
Okay.
It was a lot of I love doing the food truck rallies, and it's a different vibe from a farmers market because people are there to actually eat and they know what they're going to buy. Farmers markets, you're kind of competing with
produce and
people on different diets, or people there's popsicles and other bakeries that are there as well, and it's like, okay, it's a little bit, and it's a much longer shift as well.
Yeah.
So when we started doing the food truck events, I'm like, wow, these are so much easier than doing farmers markets.
Yeah.
And just kind of, I credit a lot of where we are today to a lot of the food trucks here in Huntsville, and just them helping us get in with them. People like, Beast Mode, or the people who own Fire and Spice, or some of the OGs like I Love Bacon and Rolling Lobster that really, and even Andrew from Sugar Bell. Yeah. Because he and I actually were fairly decent friends now. And it's one of those things where if I have a question, I can still go to him to this day and be like, hey, what'd you do for this thing here?
Yeah, I mean, because like they were the original sort of food truck cupcake. Like I guess they really kind of brought Huntsville into the idea that you can have like nice cupcakes, and like cupcakes can be kind of more of a specialty thing than just like the typical cupcakes you find at the grocery store. Like you can do way more than people ever imagine with a cupcake.
Yeah, I would say Sugar Bell laid like the Huntsville foundation for cupcakes.
And they were around 7 or so years before they ended up having to close the door, I guess, right around COVID.
Yeah. So just to finish the story out, in 2019, we got the Botanical Gardens who contacted us to do their Chinese Lantern Festival, which was a 40 nights worth of like just constant, almost like every night was like a food truck event.
Wow.
And it was insane. Where it's like trying to balance that, and we'd have other events like the food truck rallies and things in Decatur, and like just going all over. It's like, okay, this is almost like running a storefront.
Yeah.
Because like, okay, we have to have everything for the the Botanical Gardens, 5 nights a week, and then where are we going this day, and then we were still trying to do some farmers markets.
And at all this time, like just to like let people know, you were baking all this in your house. Yeah. It was not like home-based you were completely home based. So you're having to. And most of the stuff, like you said, is that sort of that made to order sort of mentality that you had. So, I mean, the timing of when you had to bake these things for these events, I couldn't imagine your schedule at the time.
Yeah, I would start at like 8 in the morning and would not be done working when we were doing Botanical Gardens until like 10, 11 o'clock at night. And I'd be doing that like, 6, 7 days a week. And I'm just like, okay, it's fun. I tell people, like, if you don't love the culinary industry, it will drive you insane.
Yeah. And if you're not fully invested into what the business is too, like if you expect to start a business, no matter what business it is, and you expect someone else to run it for you, the business is probably not something you should start. Yeah. Like you start it because you're passionate about it and you make good products and you're willing to put the work in too. And so in 2018, you landed the stuff at the Botanical Gardens. You're doing the Chinese Lantern festivals. And you're just running around like crazy.
Yeah, I kind of felt like we exploded in 2019, and then 2020 we're like, oh, cool. And I kind of went into that year, and like I have nothing against the farmers market scene. I'm like, I would love to not do any farmers markets this year.
Yeah.
And COVID hit. And I'm like, oh, okay, that didn't.
Yeah.
But then we were lucky that the food trucks, again, were there were people who organized food trucks going directly out to neighborhoods. And like, so it would just be like us and a food truck, and we would set up there for like 2 hours, and families can come and eat, and then they'd go home. And like we were doing that 5-6 days a week. At like, I think we were splitting neighborhoods at that point. And it was, and it felt almost like doing Botanical Gardens all over again. Yeah. It's like, okay, we know that we're going to this. It just got a lot of random scheduling. Like, we're going to be in Madison here, and then we're going to be in South Huntsville this day, and then we're going to be in 5 Points over here this day. And it was a lot of work, but it was also a lot of fun because we got to meet a lot of different people while also realizing that COVID was definitely taking over.
Yeah. And that was like, January, February probably of 2020?
We started doing the events in neighborhoods in, I think, March or April,
okay.
Because I think things started shutting down here in Huntsville in February or March.
Yeah, I guess so. Okay, so you're doing these at the time, COVID's going on, and I guess kind of at some point in 2020, you decide that a brick-and-mortar location is the next step for the cupcake business.
I kind of felt like I had taken the business as far as I could go, just from out of our house, and it's one of those things. I'm like, well, let's start looking at locations and see what's out there. And I remember just driving one Sunday past our where we ended up going, and I saw a sign in the building that said, "Hey, we're looking for bakeries in this plaza." So I called the guy, left a message, and that next morning, myself and my mom and sister all went look this location, walked in, and just fell in love with the whole entire space.
And so the people that are listening that kind of want a better idea where your location is, can you kind of explain where it is on University?
So we are in the same plaza where Papa Euros and Nukes and Bumpers and like the Juicy Seafood, right across the street from Rooms to Go.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so you land that you I guess see the location, you fall in love with the location, you end up signing an agreement with the location. When was that in 2020?
So we signed the lease towards the end of July in 2020.
Okay. So you signed the lease in into July, and what is your initial expectation of when you'd be in the place at that moment?
I was told it'd be a 6 to 8 week project.
Okay, 6 to 8 weeks.
That ended up going 18 months instead.
Okay, so 6 to 8 weeks turn into 16 to 18 months. And you actually get into the location in December of 2021.
Yes, we opened December 7th, which that was an insane day. It was finally like that dream finally coming true. Which like I got to that point with doing construction. We're like, I don't think we're ever going to open.
And then you finally open the doors, and you're able to do that. Was the kind of the work you'd have done over the last 5 or 6 years with the business in town, and you're able to now have a brick and mortar location, was the success right off the bat for the store, and were you able to kind of push customers that were enjoying your cupcakes at these markets and at these other events to kind of come to the location? Or what did that look like in December?
So in December, I felt like you were having to jump right into like the Christmas like, rush of everything, and like we had just missed Thanksgiving, and it was like I wanted to do so much more. I wanted to do a decorating event in our shop. We couldn't do that because like we were kind of at that point overwhelmed with trying to figure out, how many cupcakes we can go through on a random Tuesday or a Monday, or like just trying to get our feet under us essentially, and like just learn, okay, how many cupcakes we go through on a daily basis, or what coffee drinks, or what, and then me trying to also keep our events going, which was very fun to do because we were doing things like Tinsel Trail, and we had a couple other businesses that had us come out to do like coffee and things like that, which it was a lot to deal with at one point. And we kind of had to, like in January, just kind of take a step back and like, okay, let's kind of pause events just slightly and just kind of focus on getting the shop up fully. And then I think back in February or March, we started like kind of going full swing again with like, okay, we're going to run our events and we're going to have the shop going full time, and we're going to just kind of use the events to filter people into the shop, almost like a free marketing event.
So you've had the shop, you've had the brick and mortar location for about 10 months now, and obviously now it's not just you doing everything. You obviously kind of have a team that is able to run the shop, and a team that's able to go to these markets, and you're able to balance yourself between the two. How do you find balance, and how do you kind of juggle those things? Because I mean, like you said, the events are a huge thing, and it is kind of what people know you for. And so being able to still go to those and be able to say, now we actually have a location, you could see us, 5 days a week, 6 days a week, whatever that might be.
I think a lot of it now comes to us like knowing what each event does, where it's like, okay, well, food trucks is something we kind of have to go to. It's one of those, we call it like one of the cash cow events, where it's like, yeah, we know we're going to go there and we'll do really, really well. There's also certain events that we'll go to and like, I don't really know how this is going to go.
Yeah.
And it's kind of just a learning of where everything is and how just kind of getting a prediction of how we go there. Because there's certain schools that have us out once a month or so that we still go to now. And it's just one of those things like we kind of, once we learned a couple of times of going, like, oh yeah, this place is worth going back to multiple times, or some of them like, oh yeah, we're not going back.
So do you think over since having the brick and mortar location, you've become a little bit more selective on where events you go to, because you do have a store that you're able to push people to?
I would say definitely that, and then like any other restaurant, there's always the staffing issues that are going on right now.
Yeah. So I mean, I couldn't imagine. I mean, obviously, we get through COVID and you're able to open up the stores, which is a huge achievement in your journey within the business.
Some people thought I was crazy to try to open up a store in the middle of a pandemic, and then like you mentioned, Sugar Bell closing at that time.
Yeah.
It just kind of happened. Like as they were closing, I was like signing my lease, and I'm like, hey, any stuff that you want to get rid of?
So you're able to kind of get some stuff from them and able to kind of help with the cost for sure. I bet. I mean, it's a lot like having an equipment like an espresso machine and stuff like that if you're able to get from them and stuff.
Yeah, I think we got like our espresso machine. We got all of our tables and chairs we got from Sugar Bell. So like Sugar Bell kind of lives on just slightly in the shop, just a little different color. Like we painted all the tables and the chairs to kind of make it more fit our aesthetic a little bit more. And like, it's just one of those things where like, yeah, we kind of wanted to keep some vibes of like the people who kind of laid the foundation a little bit.
So we talked a little bit at the very beginning of kind of what it looks like for you operating one now, but you talk a little bit about kind of what someone could experience when they come into your store, and like what is that cupcake experience that they can have?
I'm glad you said experience, because that's what we try to tell people. It's not just eating cupcake. You're there for an experience of the cupcakes, because we're not, most cupcake shops who just have the cupcakes already frosted, decorated, and just sitting there. We have everything covered and like in a cool space, so that like when you come in and we have 9 different flavors that are quote unquote our like seasonals, or we call them our signatures.
Okay.
Which is 3 of the seasonals and then like 6 ones that we always have
Gotcha.
there. And it's like, okay, cool. We can people can pick from any of those, and we'll get them done. It takes us, I think, maximum, like we've done a dozen cupcakes in like a couple minutes.
Yeah.
So we've gotten to a science of like just learning to get them done pretty fast. But people can also come in and, just if they want a certain flavor and they don't see it on the menu, we have a whole creation side where you can come in and be like, hey, I want the white chocolate cupcake with cookies and cream frosting on it, and can you fill it with caramel? And I'm like, yeah, we can do that right then and there. And then like we have different kind of fun toppings. Like we use a lot of different edible glitters in the shop. So we've got like silver, blue, purple, gold, and like you'd be surprised how many men actually come in and like boys and men that actually will put glitter on their cupcake because it just makes it sparkle.
Yeah, and it's just different. It's like it's something that you don't see often.
We tell people like it takes it from just being a cool cupcake to being an Instagrammable cupcake.
Yes, you can definitely take a photo of this and definitely share. I mean, like we have a few cupcakes. If you're watching the YouTube video, we have a few cupcakes on the table that he brought for me, and they're very colorful. I mean, every single one of them is a different color. None of them really match, and it's. I mean, I'm super excited to eat these. I'm definitely gonna have to have lunch before I eat any of those because they look like they're full of sugar. But I'm so excited. But
one thing I will tell you about our cupcakes, they're not gonna be over the top sweet.
Okay.
Like we try to balance everything out. So like if we know, like the lavender lemon berry is like the most popular flavor on our menu.
Wow.
So it's at a mixed berry sauce swirled into the cupcake and drizzled over the top. But the cake is not gonna be over the sweet.
Gotcha. Kind of balance those two things out.
Because like. We want people to kind of be able to experience the flavor, not just the over-the-top sugar.
Yeah, so the cupcake shop is obviously transformed to just not being a cupcakes, but you kind of add the full espresso bar. Tell a little bit about what that looks like, too. Because, I mean, a lot of people are looking for that experience of being able to sit down and kind of, at a typical coffee shop, people stay there and work a long time. Is that kind of what you envisioned with the cupcake shop, too?
It is. So, like, we use the same coffee roaster that Piper and Leaf uses,
okay.
Which we'll get our beans there. From them, we try to make a good chunk of our own syrups in house. So, like, before I got here today, we did our pumpkin spice syrup there. We'll make our own lavender syrup or vanilla, like things like that, just to kind of so we can have the power of what goes into our lattes and our different drinks. We'll do things like cereal milk lattes, where I think this month is going to be a little bit of Fruity Pebbles.
Okay.
And then, like, not just having just espresso, but we also do lemonades in our shop as well.
Wow.
Which we have 3 different flavors. Like we have a rosemary orangeade. Our Regale lemonade is lavender infused, which we use butterfly pea leaves to make it purple. And then this month we have what we call an apple patch brew, which is like briar patch from Piper and Leaf, apple cider, and like our base lemonade mix that we make up ourselves.
Wow.
So like just creating unique things. And then like on certain days of the week, like Wednesday through Friday, we have what we call our 48-hour cookie, which is like it's a brown butter cookie, and like we've started doing like 2 different varieties each week. And then Saturdays we call it's Cinnamon Roll Saturday. So we will do like fresh baked cinnamon rolls, and this month it's cinnamon rolls and pumpkin butter rolls that we'll be doing. So
all that sounds delicious. I haven't had lunch yet, so I'm super hungry. I think that's like one of the things that people don't expect from a typical cupcake shop is that it has so much than just cupcakes.
Yeah, we try. Yes, our base is always going to be like cupcakes to start, but like it's one of those things where it allows me now being in the storefront to kind of like flex my culinary muscles a little bit, where it's like, hey, I want to do a cookie, but I don't want to just do any cookie. I want this really cookie that's crispy on the outside but soft on the inside that like takes 48 hours to do something. And then like the cinnamon rolls, it's like, we're going to do these cinnamon rolls, but only on this one day a week. So that way it kind of builds like a little bit of a demand for them in a sense.
So, I mean, thinking over the last 10 months with having a brick and mortar location, obviously there's skills and there's lessons that you learn when you have a business of any kind at any level, even if it going to the markets and stuff like that. There's a whole new level of skills that you learn when you open up a brick and mortar location. Thinking over the last 10 months, what are some skills that you knew the least about when you had to start a business? Because you wear so many different hats as a business owner. What is a skill or something that you have to do as a business owner now that you knew the least amount when you first started?
Learning more than anything else how to delegate a little bit more.
Okay.
Learning that I don't have to do everything myself, and learning to really, truly trust in the staff and the people that I have working with me, because otherwise I would never sleep.
Yeah. And that is a recommended thing most of the time. So I think that is a tough thing as a business owner, is getting used to saying that, like, I think there is that trust that you have to build, but there's also that, like, hey, like, at the end of the day, like they're here for the experience, and I know that these cupcakes are going to turn out well. I know this product's going to turn out well. I just need to be like, okay, you can do it in like, you like, here's things you could help me with, because I feel like a lot of it's too is just like being willing to give, like the business is your baby. Yep. And you don't want to give anyone else the, like, my
mother wants grandkids. I'm like, well, you've got 9 each month.
Yeah.
In the shop.
Yeah. And then, and you have cinnamon rolls on Saturdays, and you have cookies on other days too. So there's variety of grandkids. So it's just a very tough thing to kind of do that. Obviously your journey through being a business owner has changed greatly from doing markets and having a brick and mortar location, and also now still doing the markets and still doing these other things at the same time. Did you always envision that that you were going to be you're going to own your own business one day? Was that always a thought in your head, or do you think that entrepreneurial mindset is something that you've kind of built over the years?
It kind of something I built more over the years. I wanted to be a lawyer when I was a kid.
A little different than culinary.
Oh, completely different. My high school that I went to was a law, like slightly based school, and I realized we sat in the courthouse for a full day, and I'm like, God, I hate this.
Yeah, can't do this. Things I won't be able to do. Be a lawyer now. Yep. Got it. Check.
But I always liked baking and cooking, so I'm like, well, I'll look into culinary school, and even then I thought, I want to be an executive chef in a restaurant, and then get into school and get deeper into it, and just kind of fell in love with the baking aspect of it. And for some people, like, baking stresses them out. For me, it's very relaxing.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where, like, I can kind of push the boundaries a little bit of, like, what traditionally
tomato soup cupcake. That's that's pushing the boundaries.
Yeah, and that was one that people, like, we have the name just like that for a reason, because they'll come in like tomato soup. And I'm like, yeah, it's our carrot cake.
Yeah, it's almost one of our favorite, like, best sellers. And like, no way. And they get it and they love it. What I think is super interesting too is most people wouldn't. I don't know. I feel like, I'm also, like, I've jumped right into this out of school. Like, I do my own business right out of school and marketing and stuff like that. But it is a tough thing for people to do it right out of school. And like, yes, you had a job for a year, but like, you've been doing this as like your sole income for a very long time, and it's crazy just to see the journey. Do you ever like reminisce and look back and like where you were when you first started this, or is that something that you're always looking ahead?
I look back a lot of the time. It's one of those things like, God, we've come a long way. I remember I used the Time Hop app, and like I'll see pictures of some of the first events that we did when I would be I'd be out in the market and I'd be in a full chef coat. I'm like, it is 90 degrees outside. Why was I doing that? And like some of the original like T-shirts we would have for events and things like that. I was like, wow, those look awful.
The brand's grown over the years. You can laugh about that, and then you can say what not to do now. Yeah. So do you think you're 50-50 as far as looking back and looking forward, or do you think now with having that brick and mortar location, you're maybe looking a little bit more forward to like new and innovative things you can do with the business?
I would say I'm looking forward more, but it always helps to know where you're coming from.
Yeah. So
that way you know how to appreciate where you're going a little bit.
Do you think that the connections you've made within the industry and like different markets, and like obviously with Sugar Bell and with them over there, do you think those connections have kind of helped lay the framework a little bit for you? And
definitely.
I think that's one thing that some people are maybe listening or weary about, is that you can ask these business owners questions.
Like people think that two cupcake places are so competitive.
Yeah.
And like Sugar Bell, we would set up at food truck rallies, literally right next to each other.
Yeah.
And we would crack jokes and jabs at each other, just respectfully, where it's like, hey, I don't want a red velvet cupcake. We have a purple velvet one. And like Sugar Bell did what they did very, very well. Mm-hmm. And they built a base of people that, to this day, people are still wondering where Sugar Bell is. And it's like, cool. Like we have a slightly different group of people, because our cupcakes are not just the traditional style. We try to we have some simple, but we also try to go a little bit more like a elevated like cupcake in a sense.
So, and I think that's like, I think most people, like getting able to talk to somebody, if you have a question about a business owner, I feel like being able just to like ask those questions, people are a little bit weary about, because they're like, like they don't have time for me. It's like, really? Like they love, I've seen it. They love the idea of being able to talk to them about what they do, especially if someone's passionate about it. Like if you're able to, like, you have this idea for this cupcake and you're able to then go to Sugar Bell and say like, hey, like, how did you navigate these events? And how did you, like, what are some numbers that you used with these events to kind of help make sure you didn't run out, or like you didn't make too much, or like, how did you do that? Like, they're like, oh yeah, 100%. Like I'll show you kind of what we do.
I do remember asking Sugar Bill before our first food truck event, like, hey, how many cupcakes do you typically bring to these events? I'm like, I don't know what to bring.
No idea.
But we got lucky, and then like not just Sugar Bill, but other food trucks as well. It's like, hey, you go to this business a lot. How does it normally go for you guys? And a lot of them will tell us no issue because like we don't harm the food trucks. We are there to bring something different.
Yeah, almost like offering a sweet treat with the food truck.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's kind of like the cool thing about what we've done with like just we're bringing the 10 by 10 tent to these events and truck set up, and we're right next to them. So like you can get your lunch or dinner and you can get your dessert all in one space.
Yeah. So do you think, looking over these since basically 2014 when you quit your job and you kind of went into the business, to now in 2022, going on 2023, 10 months into having a brick and mortar, looking at your whole journey as a whole, how much of your success would you contribute to being in the right place at the right time, and how much would you contribute to your hard work?
I would say hard work, and I wouldn't say right place, right time. I would say like I've been really grateful to have met some really awesome people. Like we wouldn't be where we are today from the support of some certain friends, certain family members of mine, and then of course like the food trucks and other businesses, because they really at moments where we were like at crossroads that then maybe I'd be able to just help and like, hey, you can come do this with us if you want, and we would not be anywhere without them.
Yeah. So if anyone's listening right now and they want to enjoy these delicious cupcakes, and I'll hold them up to the camera so the camera can see it. But if anyone wants to enjoy your delicious cupcakes, go to any of these events, find out more information about your brick and mortar location, where you're located, any of these like pop-ups you're going to be at. Where can they find out more information about you?
So on Facebook, it's Regale Cupcakery. On Instagram, it's also at Regale Cupcakery. Our storefront location is at 4925 University Drive, suite number 114. We do deliver on DoorDash, Grub South, and Grubhub as well.
Okay. Well, I love learning more about your journey and your story of owning and operating a cupcake shop. It's crazy just to see how the passion you have for this, I think, is easily poured out into the cupcakes you create. And I continue to look forward to the success that your cupcake shop will have in Huntsville for years to come. And thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me.